Okay, um, let's go ahead and begin. Welcome, everybody. We know some people may be joining a little late, but let's get this going. So glad you are with us. Cindy, Anna, and I so appreciate you taking time to be part of this, what we call exciting healthcare series focused on well-being, which will continue on September 21st. And our last session will be on October 4th. This is the 6th of 8 meetings where we are showcasing to our community the best of the best innovations in well-being, ones that are positively impacting organizations as they focus on engaging and retaining talent. Before I turn it over to our session leader, Art Dickerson, to introduce Regenexx and Vivante Health, we certainly want to acknowledge and thank our sponsors, ADP and Siegel, and of course, a special call out to Art for his willingness to facilitate and moderate these discussions. Art is one of the innovators in the well-being space. He has been instrumental in targeting solution providers, really, who are unique and some of the best. Art is the president and CEO of Top Gear Strategies, has been at the forefront of innovation for over 4 decades, and his company advises on leading innovations and growth strategies. So with that, I will turn it over to Art to set the stage for our time together and introduce Regenexx and Vivante Health. Art, all yours.
Well, thank you, John. And I'm happy to be here today. For those of you that have been at some of these earlier sessions, you already know that we're focusing on the reasons why employers are doubling down on these innovative strategies as a means to improve engagement and retention of their staff and top talent. But we're going to be focusing in several areas, both behavioral health and financial well-being over this series. And today, once again, we have 2 of the best innovators who are positively impact the future of work. We're going to be talking to today or hearing from Regenexx, and we also have presenters from Vivante Health. You'll hear more about their capabilities in just a second. These are really unique innovations that you just need to listen closely to, because they are something that you may have not heard of before or only heard of most briefly. And one of the reasons why we are holding this session is to make sure that we show you exactly how you can change the game with engagement and retention with these 2 companies. We're going to be recording today's session, and there'll be a link sent out to ESA's YouTube channel along with the presentation. So we're going to get started, and we know that you are spending a lot of your valuable time to be with us today, so we're grateful. And now I'm going to turn this over to our first presenter in just a second. That's Mark Gillette, and we will let him speak in just a second. He's the Executive Vice President with Regenexx. Regenexx has a unique orthopedic solution that you're going to be very excited to hear about for well-being. Also, we have both Bill Snyder, CEO, and Dr. Simon Matthews, an advisory board member of Vivante Health, here to talk about their solutions in the space of digestive and gut health. Mark's going to kick this off in just a moment, but I want to make sure you all know to stick around for part 2, led by Bill and Simon on Vivante Health as well. So you absolutely won't want to miss that second session either. Mark, we're very delighted to have you on our panel today. And for the group's benefit, I'm happy to report to all of you on this call today that I'm a satisfied Regenexx patient that helped me avoid surgery over 6 years ago. After Mark finishes, Bill and Dr. Matthews, I want to thank you for being on our panel today, and congrats on being a first mover in the category that is as costly as oncology, called digestive health or gut health. So Mark, you can go ahead and share your screen as our next step. Remember, you've got 15 minutes, and thereafter we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. I will cut you off at 15 minutes sharp, so we have time for all the presentations today. Mark, please share your screen and begin now. You got 15 minutes.
All right, thank you. Can everyone see my screen just so I verify?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks everyone for taking time out to listen to our story today. I think you'll find it really interesting, and it's fun because it really benefits employers and their employees in a number of different ways. Throughout the presentation, at the highest level, what I'd like you to keep in mind that medically speaking, Regenexx is potentially an alternative for many orthopedic surgeries. And when you have an alternative to surgery, that can drive some very significant benefits for companies. The first benefit I'd like to talk about, because the theme of today's presentation is, of course, engagement and retention, is related to the strategic wellness goals that your company is participating in. From a physical standpoint of those goals, Regenexx addresses MSK or orthopedic issues so people can move easily. This is very important. If it hurts for a person to move or to exercise, their engagement falters, they don't participate with the team, and in the end, the team's cohesiveness can be weakened. Maybe most critically, other established programs that you're likely already significantly investing in can suffer. For example, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular programs, for them to be effective, they all rely on exercise. And if a person can't move because they've got an MSK injury, they're unlikely to participate in that particular program, and the effectiveness of those substantial investments are diminished. On the emotional and spiritual side of those goals, it's important to consider the well-being and connection that people have to their employer, the team, and the company. From an engagement standpoint, when a person feels good, they can move well, they have increased productivity and they're happy. When they're happy, they can be productive. That means that you have a stronger team and the employer benefits. On a retention side, when employees perceive that their employer is caring, loyalty goes up significantly and they tend to stay with the company. And finally, on the competitive side of all this footing is recruiting. When potential recruits see that employers are differentiated by offering innovative benefits within these programs, it can benefit the employer by having these available and being different from what other competitor companies might be offering. Slide. On the other side, or one of the other significant benefits, even though we're talking about engagement and retention, is there are some substantial economic benefits that can come to you when you've got a program like Regenexx in place. We know that orthopedic issues are the #1 reasons for doctor visits in the US. And if you look at just the subset of self-funded employers in the United States, they on average are spending between 15 and 25% of their total healthcare spend on orthopedic care. This is backed up by other data on the right-hand side of the slide that shows in 2021, MSK or orthopedic related issues were the #1 largest bucket of spending in the healthcare area for these self-funded employers. In 2022, it's projected to be in second place only behind cancer. So if there was a way to start to impact these orthopedic costs to such a degree that they could alter the trajectory to more controllable line of the total healthcare spending, it can offer significant benefits to companies. It can free up money that can be used in other places. And that's what I'm going to explain throughout the rest of the presentation. So here, I think it helps to understand what Regenexx is actually doing from a medical side and how it can actually drive and support these wellness program goals and these economic saving potentials. So again, at the top line of this slide, Regenexx is potentially an alternative for orthopedic surgery. We accomplish this by using minimally invasive outpatient injections of a person's own natural healing cells. These natural healing cells fall into a category called orthobiologics. There are many of them. The two primary ones that people typically hear about are platelets, PRP, for example, or bone marrow concentrate, which is where stem cells come from. So what is Regenexx doing with these particular cells and these treatments to start to make this change away from surgery, have an alternative, and drive these other benefits? So why was there a need for orthopedic surgery in the past? The cardiovascular or the circulatory system or blood vessels, most simply, are really the transport mechanism to the body. But the problem is within a joint such as the knee, there are no blood vessels. So the body has no way of bringing healing cells to that injury. So if a person injured their knee, for example, oftentimes a surgeon had to mechanically put that body back together because the body couldn't transport those cells to start a healing or regenerative type of process. Compare that to the analogy of a broken leg. Typically, when a person breaks a leg, they don't need to have a surgery. a doctor will put a cast around that leg so it stays aligned, but within that bone, this is where all the blood flow, the stem cells, the blood platelets exist. They're there at the source of the injury, so the body can use this to create a self-healing type of process. So finally, at the bottom, this is where I like to think of simply as Regenexx as a speedy delivery service. If a person injures their knee and they've got the type of injury that's treatable by cellular medicine, we'll select the right orthobiologic. Although there are different healing cells within the body, different cells heal different structures differently. So you can't simply use a stem cell for all injuries. It's not the nature of how it works. In some cases, it might be more appropriate to use blood platelets, for example. So we're going to select the right healing cell based on the injury. We're going to get it from the appropriate source, whether it means taking it from the bone marrow or doing a blood draw through the arm. And then we're going to relocate those cells to the injury. And then we can treat that knee in this particular case. So again, the secret, and it's not really a secret, anything miraculous about what Regenexx is doing, is we're taking healing cells from one part of the body and we're relocating them to the injury because the body otherwise cannot transport them there. Where does Regenexx fit into what you might be accustomed to in terms of MSK and orthopedic type of care? If you look at the black middle section of this, traditionally, if somebody had an orthopedic injury, they hopefully started with a non-surgical or conservative approach. This might be physical therapy, for example, to strengthen the body, or pharmaceuticals to manage pain, and hopefully a little bit of healing takes hold. If that doesn't work, there were oftentimes the only place left to go was a direct line to surgery. There's a lot of problems with surgery. Oftentimes in these MSK situations, they're overused unnecessarily. Unfortunately, MSK surgeries have a very high failure rate, and they're also very expensive. So what Regenexx is a step between or an intervention before maybe a surgery has to take place. And there are some very powerful benefits when employers have these in place. For employers to put these into a benefits plan, they can reduce these orthopedic or these elective orthopedic surgeries by up to 2/3. What I mean by that is these types of treatments work very well in situations where the orthopedic injury is a result of aging degeneration or a sports injury or a workplace injury. About a third of the cases where they don't work is if somebody's been in a terrible automobile accident and something's been ripped apart, is no longer intact, that really does necessitate a surgery. Now, but fortunately, those are only about a third of the cases, so there's a significant number that we need help to impact. Because we can impact and eliminate so many of these orthopedic surgeries, employers are able to reduce their orthopedic spending by up to 70% on an ongoing annual basis. I'm going to touch on a quick case study right after this. And then finally, we're aware of, like I mentioned before, we're competing with all sorts of different ideas for cost savings programs, for wellness programs. But one of the unique things about Regenexx is we charge nothing to participate in the program. There's no cost, there's no strings attached. The only time your employer would ever see a fee for using Regenexx if somebody came into a clinic, was seen and treated, and then we would file the claim through your TPA. If it's never used, it just sits on standby, ready for use within your benefits plan. A very quick case study. This is one of our current referenceable clients, Viking Yachts. If you look on the left-hand side of the slide, there are 8 different procedures that Viking Yachts experienced during this study period. They spent roughly $92,000 on Regenexx. If you look at the right-hand side of the slide, you're going to see the diagnosis and the surgeries that were actually recommended to take place. We worked with Viking Yachts Insurance Advisor and their TPA, and we got the contracted surgical costs that Viking Yachts would have incurred. Had Regenexx not been an option, Viking Yachts likely would have spent $375,000 on those particular surgeries. Because Regenexx was an option, they only spent $90,000. This equated to a 75% reduction during that study period. And this is a typical number of what our employers experience. To finalize on the economic benefits, these savings that we talk about sound substantial and sometimes maybe dreamy, but they've been substantiated. The Validation Institute is a third-party independent entity that analyzes medical providers, the effectiveness of their claims, and the economic value of their particular claims. So they went through an 18-month study on Regenexx. They interviewed our clients, and in April of this particular year, they gave us their highest certification of validation, stating that the savings claims that we're stating that Regenexx can make for companies actually do occur. A very quick slide. If an employer becomes interested in using Regenexx, it's very simple to implement into a benefits plan. All major TPAs, all major healthcare providers, all major stop-loss providers in the United States already allow and fully pay Regenexx claims. From a tracking standpoint, one of the most important things I can bring, I think, is that Regenexx already has 6 million employees getting Regenexx as a benefit through self-funded employers' plans. This is important because we know many employers are conservative. They don't want to do something so cutting edge that might put their plan or their company at risk. We have thousands of employers from size of as few as 50 people up to Fortune 100 companies with hundreds of thousands of employees using this particular program successfully. So finally, let's net it out. Regenexx is a medical procedure. We use minimally invasive sets of injections of a person's own natural cells to treat MSK injuries. Because we can treat these orthopedic injuries so well, Regenexx can become or seen as a surgical alternative. Most of the common and expensive orthopedic surgeries your company is paying for can likely be avoided. Because you can avoid so many of these expensive surgeries, this is where Regenexx becomes a cost savings program. MSK and orthopedic spending can be reduced substantially. The savings can be invested into other wellness programs or other areas the company deems as important. And then finally, from this kind of wellness and engagement perspective, there are a number of other benefits that come from this. Innovative programs increase competitiveness and loyalty for your company. There's a substantial reduction in absenteeism. Again, these are outpatient procedures. A person can be back at work typically the next day using their body. They might be on a slow return to duty, but surgeries, which oftentimes fail because the physical therapy is difficult to get through or done improperly, Regenexx doesn't present that problem. You can be back to work the next day. From, again, that competitive employee standpoint, very high satisfaction ratings. And then finally, again, talking about increasing the effectiveness and supporting established wellness programs. Again, think about those cardiovascular and diabetes programs that are very expensive and very important. If people can't move and exercise, those effects are going to be diminished, so Regenexx can help them go further within these programs. So the bottom line is that a Regenexx procedure is given, a surgery is avoided, and when you avoid surgery, that's where savings can occur for the employer, and you have many happy and engaged employees. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. And I don't know, I wasn't looking at my clock. If I got close to the 15-minute mark, that's great. But I'm happy to talk about any questions. And maybe before I do, Art, I don't recall it was your knee that you had treated by Regenexx 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, it was over 6 years ago, and I was doing 80% national travel and had a severe meniscus tear. And I sought this out after having very unsatisfactory discussions with orthopedic physicians who wanted to really inject my knee with an $800 rooster comb organic substance, or they wanted to operate on it. And I had studied the effects, the cost, the outcomes with both remedies, rejected both remedies, and chose the Regenexx. It took me 3 2-hour approximately outpatient visits in 1 week, and then obviously a month with some knee braces. And in 90 days, my severely torn meniscus was perfectly healed, and it's been great ever since. It's been 6 years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're we actually have extra time if you want to go. You have actually a couple minutes if you really want to touch base on something else, or we can go on to the Q&A portion. We do have some questions coming in.
Yeah, no, I'd love to take the questions. I'll just put this up because this might spur other types of questions, but usually the questions are more fun than me just going through slides.
Yeah, so one of the questions that came up is about the effectiveness for patients with osteoarthritis or RA.
Yep. So we can treat osteoarthritis very effectively. However, it depends on how far the degeneration has gone. So if you hear that term bone-on-bone arthritis, that sounds scary. It's something doctors say to kind of sway your viewpoint of care. If you have 1 millimeter of cartilage gone and bone is touching bone, they call that bone-on-bone arthritis, and it really sounds horrible. When bone-on-bone arthritis is truly a problem is when there's no cartilage left in a particular joint, and it's 100% bone touching 100% bone, and there's no cartilage to work with. In those particular cases, Regenexx is not an option. So that's a scenario where I talked about a third of people are not good candidates. So for us to be able to treat a person, there's got to be some minimal amount of tissue or cartilage less in this particular case to work with as a foundation for, some healing or some regeneration. The only way we can determine that is by seeing you in a clinic. So that's where we can use imaging, such as MRIs, X-rays, or ultrasound, to take a look at where the damage is within that particular joint, see how far gone the arthritis is, and then tell you whether we think we can treat this, or you may be better served by going to see an orthopedic doctor.
Yeah, same kind of question relative to cartilage damage.
Yep. Again, Regenexx can treat cartilage damage very well, but it depends on how much cartilage is left. And that's the critical thing. If it has become so diminished that there's not enough tissue for these injections of the cells to adhere to, a healing process can't start. So again, we can treat that, but we would need to see you and determine how much of a foundation of that cartilage is actually existing to see if we can, attach the cells to it.
A great point, and one of the reasons why, as part of this series, we're encouraging employers to add this feature to your benefit plan and help people have an alternative early on. My own personal experience was, this remedy was, we're going to shoot WD-40 into your knees, and it only cost $35. And with my experience, I wouldn't leave the exam room until they called Blue Cross and got the price. And they were shocked that it was $800 for the shot and the injection, which would last about 6 months. And that would be for the rest of my life. So each knee, that's $1,600 a year. If you have a high deductible plan, that's what you're looking for a lifetime. And so the Regenexx treatment for me, which by the way, I did reluctantly after talking to about 7 patients, ranging from a lady in a wheelchair at 44 years old, all the way up to a 77-year-old woman, and all was just raving reviews about the outcomes, which I can now speak personally to. So I think the trick here is to get this as an eligible benefit under your plan, the self-funded plan, and start encouraging this as an alternative that the employee would make as an informed choice, as I made the choice of PT, meniscus, the stem, the Synvisc injections, the arthroscopic surgery, which will in fact destabilize the knee over time. And so I chose the stem cell treatment, but giving your employees a choice by having this available. Where are your locations is the other one. So obviously interested about finding out what's the proximity to major metropolitan areas. I know you've expanded dramatically since 2006.
Sorry.
16, brother.
Yeah, so we've got 88 locations open right now. You can see that they are mostly in major metropolitan areas around the country. There are some voids in some of the less populous types of states, but essentially whether a person makes a choice if they're not in a convenient location just comes down to economic value for the company. If somebody can avoid a $30 or $40 or $50,000 surgery and get treated by Regenexx for $5,000 or $6,000 and not have to have that surgery, most employers will view it as no problem to give a person a day off, maybe create a little bucket for travel allowance and get them in somewhere to be treated. Many of our employers will actually put in a travel allowance and have a model where the employees can use that per year to get to a particular clinic. If somebody becomes interested in that, we can share best practices or tell you about what other employers are doing. If none of that sounds interesting right off the bat, we do have full telehealth capabilities. So if a person is not in a convenient location, we can actually get their imaging, a pretty good job of reviewing that and determining whether or not they're a good candidate or not. After that candidacy review, then they can make an informed decision of whether this is worth their time to travel to a clinic or go seek care elsewhere.
Now, you're not promoting the Grand Cayman location, but I assume everyone in this call would love to have that option for treatment and vacation. But
we've got 10 international clinics open in different places. Cayman Islands is the closest.
I didn't mention about how I found out about Regenexx. So I live in a neighborhood with some star power, and some of the Dallas Cowboys were traveling down to Regenexx to get their stem cells cultured, cryo-frozen, and stashed for a lifetime of remedy. Since at my age, I didn't feel like I would need that many. I just did the outpatient here in Dallas, Texas. So anyway, it's there's very few things I can talk about, both as a professional consultant in the world of healthcare innovation and as a patient who's lived through it. So hopefully all of you've seen what this is all about, and we'll take a closer look at it after this session. Are there any more questions for Mark while we have him up?
Yeah, I think I had ended the sharing accidentally, so I'm just putting this back up. So in case people didn't see the graphic, they can take a look at where those locations are.
Great. Going once or twice for questions, and we'll move on then. So thank you, Mark, for that great presentation and Q&A. All right, Bill, you and Dr. Matthews are up next. I want to remind everybody to let our presenters know, or us at ESA, that you are interested in engaging with them for further conversations. And Bill, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, thank you. You did that. You got 15 minutes, 10 minutes of Q&A. You know the drill. I'll cut you off at 15 minutes sharp if necessary. So you can begin. You got 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Art. Thanks everybody for having us today. Again, my name is Bill Snyder and I'm the CEO of Vivante Health. We're really excited to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing. At Vivante, our purpose is to revolutionize digital health gut first. So we're working with individuals who suffer from chronic digestive conditions. And to give you an idea of some of the things that we see in our patient population, we're working with folks who suffer from Crohn's, from ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, GERD. We've also got a big population who don't have a diagnosis today, but are suffering tremendously from things like gas and bloating. And these are things that keep people from coming into the office, or if they are showing up in the office, they're distracted and oftentimes suffering in silence. So in today's presentation, we're going to talk about the scope of this problem. Then we're going to get into what Dr. Matthews, who is a Johns Hopkins trained gastroenterologist, typically is seen in his practice. And we'll talk about what we've built at Vivante. And then we'll get into the outcomes we've been able to generate at scale. Because I think that's the most impressive thing, is what we've been able to do for our members, both in terms of the patient reported outcomes, so impacting that holistic quality of life, but more importantly, the reduction in symptoms that we see across the board, and ultimately decreased financial costs associated with these conditions for the individuals that are suffering from them, and also from the large self-funded employers that are supporting them through offering this innovative benefit. So I do want to start by just setting the table in terms of how digestive health impacts individuals across the US, because I think people are surprised to hear the scope of these conditions. 1 in 4 Americans have a chronic digestive issue. So when we're out talking to large self-funded organizations, it's very common for us to talk to people who come up to us after and say, hey, I've been suffering from something like this for years, or I have a loved one who suffers from some of these conditions and symptoms. Abdominal pain is the #1 reason for emergency room admits across the country, which is associated with digestive conditions and symptoms. So we know that there's a lot of ER utilization going on within this population. The average healthcare cost of individuals with digestive disease is just over $17,000 per year, which is higher than the costs for individuals living with diabetes or treatment-resistant depression. So we know it's huge in scope. We know that it's a leading cause for ER admits and a top cause for outpatient care. We know that the total cost of care for individuals suffering from these conditions is extremely high. But if anybody on the call, either themselves has suffered from one of these conditions or has a loved one, you also know that the impact to quality of life is tremendous. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma associated with these conditions and symptoms. It's really difficult for people to talk about what goes on in the bathroom. And so for that reason, a lot of people are suffering in silence, and they're not really receiving the care that they need. And for that reason, again, not only do we see large amounts of cost incurred by the individuals themselves and by the employers that are sponsoring the health plans, but we also see it contribute to both absenteeism and presenteeism for employers. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matthews to tell you a little bit about where we've identified gaps in care for traditional GI care in the US, and then a little bit about what we call the gut-brain axis. So Dr. Matthews, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Really great to be with you all today. I think it's important to realize sort of the state of the specialty gastroenterology care today and some of the limitations, and how the Vivante platform has been designed essentially to address these directly. In many parts of the country, there are real issues relating to access to specialty care. Regardless of access, there's both underutilization and overutilization of specialty care in GI. And that means I can see somebody who should have been in the office 6 months ago, and the very next patient could have been somebody who doesn't need to be there at all. But I think the biggest issue that there is in sort of the conventional care delivery model is that the vast majority of time that patients spend is not in the doctor's office. And that's unfortunately where they have the least amount of support. And that's really part of what GI Thrive, the solution by Vivante, is designed to address. It's to use evidence-based questions to identify gaps in the quality of care, and then provide the instruction and support to help manage these conditions or symptoms longitudinally. It's meant to complement the care that's given in a traditional office and really strengthen the support that patients have. Next slide, Bill, please. I think, as Bill alluded to, there is something special about digestive diseases, and that's this mind-gut connection, or brain-gut axis. And what that means simply is that there's two-way communication between the brain and the GI tract. The most number of neurons outside of the brain is in the GI tract, just to give you some context. And so you can appreciate that what's going on in your GI tract can definitely impact what's going on upstairs. And the best way I sort of illustrate this for the average individual is, most of us have experienced a bout of gastroenteritis, viral gastroenteritis, or food poisoning, and you probably felt pretty miserable during that experience. Unfortunately, for some individuals with chronic digestive problems, they feel that way on a regular basis. The idea of going to work and being your best in that capacity, I think we can all appreciate the challenge that kind of environment creates. And so, and again, you may know this already as well, but there's a high link between mental illness and mental conditions like depression and anxiety, and digestive conditions. And the platform is designed to help pick up on these and help get these individuals to appropriate care. So again, GI affects more than just the GI tract. It can affect the entire body and everyone's ability to sort of get their job done. Back to you,
And so
Bill.
thanks, Simon. And so because of these limitations, that's really why we've built GI Thrive, the first all-in-one digestive health solution. And so it starts with our dynamic platform. As Dr. Matthews mentioned, we do a quick intake for individuals where we ask basic questions to understand their symptoms, their condition, any medication they're taking, and any care that they're already receiving. And then we utilize that information to do two things. One is stratify risk. And then the second is to build an evidence-based clinical protocol that the member can follow to help reduce their symptoms and get them feeling better. We provide them additional support through a virtual dedicated care team that's made up of registered dietitians and health coaches. We're licensed in every state through our registered dietitians. So every individual who signs up gets access to these dedicated care teams that are full-time employees of Vivante. Along the way, we're learning more about each individual because these conditions are so personalized. So we offer tools like a at-home fecal kit or a gut check, which is a microbiome analysis, which gives us a better understanding of the bacteria in each individual's gut, and also a hardware component, which is called our GI Mate tool. This is a miniaturized hydrogen breath test that monitors hydrogen output as an indication of digestive activity. And so we're really using this tool to help understand things like lactose malabsorption, fructose malabsorption, and ultimately help identify trigger foods that are causing inflammation in the gut for each individual. And so using these different tools, we can start to personalize the nutrition protocol that we're providing for each individual. So we're getting down to the individual food groups and identifying, okay, what's causing inflammation in this person's gut that's leading to all of these symptoms and ultimately these chronic conditions. So It's a hyper-personalized platform that's really guiding the individual to reducing their symptoms and getting them feeling better. In terms of how we work with large self-funded employers, we really work to build into your benefits ecosystem. So we are the digestive solution of choice for a lot of different aggregators out there like Virgin Pulse and Accolade. We're also working with TPAs like UMR and Marpai Health. And we are billing through claims with all major health plans, from United to HCSC to Aetna to Cigna, and many regional Blues plans as well. So we can bill this as a claim through your self-funded plan. We've built the platform so that we can also integrate into the other benefits that you offer today. For instance, if you are today working with a solution that provides MSK care, and as we're working with our individuals and we understand that, hey, there's a comorbidity that maybe hasn't been picked up yet, we can actually do true referrals back to other solutions so that it's not a disaggregated experience for the member. So we've done this with a number of our plans and a number of self-funded clients that we're working with. From a patient-reported outcomes perspective, so it starts with, are we doing our job in terms of getting people feeling better? And of those members that we've been able to survey, 87% have said that they're now better managed, they're better able to manage their digestive symptoms thanks to GI Thrive. Going back to the correlation between digestive health and mental health, we're hearing that 85% are happier thanks to GI Thrive, 83% feel healthier, 80% have cited an improved quality of life. So we know we're impacting more than just digestive health, and we're continuing to measure this across the populations that we serve. The other piece that we looked at was, how are we impacting the overall cost of care for these individuals? So this is the results of a case study that we did with a 30,000 life client who's got membership spread across the US. So I mentioned we're licensed in every state. We have active members in every state across the US. In this specific case, we did a pre-post analysis, and this was done on a 4-to-1 match case scenario, so a pretty conservative way to study both cohorts. And what we saw was just above a 3 times ROI on hard cost savings. So this was total medical spend and total pharmacy spend in the GI Thrive cohort versus the usual care cohort. Some of those drivers were reduction in emergency room visits, reduction in duplicative doctor visits, and improved medication adherence for those that are working with GI Thrive. I'm going to wrap up here on kind of the difference from what we've been able to achieve across the market. I think one of the things that's important for us to note is that we are a pay-for-use model. So for self-funded employers, it's only those who enroll that we charge. I mentioned that we are able to bill through claims, and we are willing to go up to 100% fees at risk for financial outcomes. So that's something that we've done for other clients, and happy to talk to everybody on an individual basis. But we believe that it's really important to stand behind our outcomes. So we are willing to put our fees at risk to generate those outcomes for you and your population. So just to kind of recap, this is a massive problem that I don't think people know a lot about, but we talked about the scope, we talked about the impact from the cost perspective, and also from the individual perspective. We've built the first all-in-one solution that's really been proven in terms of generating outcomes at scale. And we're focused on integrating into your benefit ecosystem. We have a proven track record of working with partners. We work with clients beginning with 1,000 employees all the way to Fortune 5 companies. We are active in every state across the US. And we'd absolutely love to learn more about you, the work you're doing in your populations, but we'll also pause here to take any questions that you may have for us.
Well, it's you're highly efficient with your delivery there, Bill, and it's not you're finishing a couple minutes early, and that's quite all right. We don't have any questions on the chat board yet, but I just want to remind everybody that you can click, to raise your hand, and we can get you on the monitor to ask a question, or you can do it through the chat function, and I'll be happy to ask those questions for you. But I will just sort of talk a little bit about this in terms of, I guess it's been about 5 or 6 years ago that I remember being asked by your organization to enable a proof of concept with Blue Cross Blue Shield data, because I bought into the concept of what was being said here. in work that I had done as an absence management and health strategy consultant, I was concerned pre-COVID about all the employees that had these conditions that wanted to work from home because they were worried about a bathroom accident. And there was nothing in a health plan or a TPA who has a charter to go to rearrange the workspace to position their office closest to the restroom. So consequently, you had not only the medical expense associated with these conditions, you also had the disability and absence expense and so forth. So not to mention the loss of engagement of people who then would, seek other work situations to solve that on their own. So it's a very intriguing solution, and I understand you guys have been selected by a major retailer as well. You have a pilot going on there, Bill, right now for a major retailer. Can you talk to that, or is that confidential?
Yeah, so it's confidential at this time, but yeah, we're working with 330,000 of their employees, and we've got again clients ranging from 1,000 lives all the way to Fortune 5 companies. So a lot of interest, and what we're seeing with the health plans as well is a lot of interest there. They're looking at their claims data. They see this as a tremendous cost driver. And so we're again having really good success with a lot of the major health plans. So I think a lot of momentum and just a lot of interest in the space in general.
Yeah, I realize it's been a while to have a mental map for what you guys are talking about, because no one was thinking about this as a collection of diseases like you do, cancer or what have you. But I think that the thing that I didn't hear you emphasize as much, though, is that I said in some of the words that a lot of this is food or diet related. And
Yeah, so,
is that right,
Art,
Simon?
maybe I could jump in really quickly because it ties into one of the questions in the chat. I will say that of folks who have digestive symptoms, upwards of 70% find there is a relationship with something they've eaten or drank. And that's part of the reason why we have registered dietitians working with everyone and using the advantage of sort of a data-driven platform to really key in on potential triggers. I think the question from Rick around what is the root cause is a really good one. And I think it's helpful to make the point that just as you started to, Art, that digestive diseases are not one thing. In fact, there are actually dozens and dozens of conditions. I mean, literally you could go down to 40, 50 different conditions. And so the actual driving force is going to be different depending on the actual condition. Some are more autoimmune mediated, some are more food driven. And so it's really important that a solution take a more nuanced approach. It can't be a one size fits all. And part of it means identifying the symptoms that are bothersome, but also understanding the distinction between these different conditions and how you might manage them. IBS and IBD are only one letter apart, but they're very different in terms of how you manage those conditions. So great question. I think speaking to the diversity of this space, we've really tried to help design the solution to accommodate the breadth of this space.
And Simon, wouldn't you say that if the average person seeking advice from a medical professional is largely going to get a prescription as opposed to digging deeper to these other
Yeah,
areas?
I think, particularly for those who are undiagnosed, there are going to be labs usually, there's going to be imaging potentially, and oftentimes a ability to, like you said, get placed on a medication. Now, that's not always a bad thing, but I think realistically, lifestyle and diet changes are not given their real weight because we don't have the resources to really support people in doing that. It's here's this printout, go figure it out, or here's a 30-second explanation of what you need to do for the next 3 months. That just doesn't cut it. And as a result, in practice, diet and lifestyle don't always have as big of an impact as they can. And so I think we really try to flip that on its head and give everyone the potential to maximize their lifestyle and diet changes, and ultimately still identify those who may be at higher risk and need further intervention, but otherwise manage folks more conservatively using just those tools if we are able to.
Yeah, and there's been some questions about, has there been any rise in the incidence of these kinds of maladies over the last few decades?
Yeah, I think Paul has come back to, yes, overall, and this is a trend for all autoimmune or immune-based conditions, that they have increased. So that puts you into sort of the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and celiac disease buckets, generally speaking. And so we are seeing an increase. And again, I think one of the points that probably is worth repeating is that 1 in 4 end up having a diagnosis of some kind. That's often, again, somebody in your family. It might be you, it might be several people on this call. It's just not something we talk about. It's not a blood pressure, it's not a cholesterol pill, it's not a knee issue, right? Those things are easy to talk about at the water cooler or over Slack or Zoom, et cetera. But digestive conditions often are, like Bill mentioned, under the surface and really associated with stigma. And I think that's part of the difference that Vivante is really making, is providing a community and a support system to help individuals in a very personalized way.
So as I understand it, obviously this is paid by the use, and so once this is offered to my employees at my company, then I, as an employee, would elect, right, to participate. So what happens when I want to make this decision? What happens? Who do I talk to? How does it get started? Can you talk a little bit about how that experience looks like?
Yeah, absolutely, Art. So for us, just in terms of the discussion we're having today, we typically do an all-comers approach because we don't want to miss all those individuals who are symptomatic but don't yet have a diagnosis, but are suffering and incurring other costs. So we do a bespoke outreach based upon the needs of each self-funded employer. And so we can do kind of an omni-channel education campaign. And so we have some folks that we've done co-branded letters for, we've done mailers, we've done everything digital for other employers. Just depends on how you like to communicate these offerings to your employees generally. And we can do unique things like embedded QR codes that take the person right to the app. And so it begins with an online intake process where it's a simple questionnaire just to get a better understanding of the member. And then it puts them right into that clinical pathway that I was talking about before. If there's ever any issues for anyone signing up, we also offer just call-in numbers where they can call in, talk to a team member who will walk them through the sign up. But we make it as seamless as possible for individuals to enroll quickly.
So, and then once I'm signed up, then do I get some supplies or this GI Thrives a sensor or something like that? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to that kind of member experience. So starts with the app. You have the clinical protocol that you're kind of going through the platform and making some changes and giving us a little bit more information about your condition and your daily routine. You're going to be offered the introduction into your care team, so you can start to utilize them day one if you'd like and get to know your registered dietitian and health coach. You also have the opportunity to order within the application a microbiome check, for instance, or start to go through the process of ordering a GI Mate tool. So these aren't tools that need to be sent to every single individual. So we see some individuals that sign up and say, hey, the platform's great. I'm going through my changes. I'm working with my care team. I'm actually don't need to do, we're not requiring the microbiome analysis or for someone to use the GI Mate tool. These are just additional tools that are included in the cost, and any member can order them. But they just give us a better picture for that member's digestive health. So, but not required. But it's very simple for them to order them. They're again included in the cost of the solution and sent right to the member's home.
Simon, we have another question there on the bottom of the list from Rick about sort of drivers of some of the increase in digestive problems, wondering about food processing or environmental issues. Any comments there?
Yep. So I was just about to write the response, but I'm glad I'll be able to speak to it. The short answer is that there can be, and it really depends on what we're talking about. Certain conditions like the development of ulcers, for example, in the stomach or the small intestine, are often from a bacteria called H. pylori, which based on where you live, the treatment for that can really vary because the antibiotic resistance patterns really vary across the earth in general, but even across the United States. Other conditions have to do, can be more common with certain food additives or preservatives. You see that in different parts of the country as well as different parts of the world. So I think that the biggest takeaway I would say around digestive conditions are that they're often multifactorial, that they're sort of components that are intrinsic to the body. There's obviously lifestyle choices, dietary choices, and then there are all these other factors like your other health conditions as well that can be impacting them. So it's important to take these conditions with a holistic look and a comprehensive look so that you're not missing the forest from the trees. And I think, again, that's what the solution really tries to do in terms of being personalized, but also providing a whole person solution. So I'm happy to take any other questions.
Well, thank you, Simon. We're out of time for today, but thank you, Bill. Thank you, Simon. We just need to wrap up things now for today. We hope everybody benefited by learning something new on this session. As we're going to close, we are, just want to reinforce that we have presenters on here today because well-being is impacted, by healthcare because it's complicated. It's hard to navigate. Health literacy is low. In some cases, we're learning today that there are options that employees don't even know about that are better for their care. So Regenexx was a solution introduced today, as well as Vivante, that improves employee well-being and by extension, engagement retention by 3 things. Regenexx is an alternate treatment to orthopedic injuries. It uses the body's own healing power to repair and avoid surgery, and it removes a lot of the pain for increased employee engagement. Conversely, Vivante Health does the same by closing gaps in care to improve gut health, positively impacts employee engagement, and decreases rates of absenteeism, behavioral, and other costs. So as we wrap up today, I just want to remind everybody, we will send out a link so you'll all have the presentation on the YouTube channel. Please reach out to the presenters directly. You'll have that contact information in their deckware to learn more about their solutions. Anna, John, you want to take it over?
Sure. Thank you so much. Excuse me, to all of you for dialing in today. This was a very engaged crowd. I love all the questions. It's terrific. And thanks again to Mark and Paul and Simon and Bill and everyone else, Art, of course, for facilitating this for us. And remember, we have 2 more of these, one on, I think, the 24th, maybe 2 weeks from today, and then one on 10/4. So if you haven't signed up for those, please do that. And remember, we got a lot of other interesting things happening here at ESA. So thanks, everybody, and we appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.